Well, good morning, everybody. I wanted to start off today with just a quick look back at the radar since midnight here. So this animation's playing through early this morning, and we're watching three different features here. We have a deep low that is moving into and through parts of Montana. We have the second one following this diving into California. We have the remnant circulation around potential tropical cyclone number 8 that continues to spread some cloud cover and some precipitation through the mid-Atlantic. Last night, as these storms kind of ripped through the western and high plains, it did produce quite a bit of wind damage. You can take a look here at the storm reports, just showing us 100 reports, 97 of which were from straight line winds. Some of these winds getting quite strong here, over 75 miles an hour. We also had some stronger storms right here along the Virginia and North Carolina border. So just keeping an eye on this storm system as it moves through, I wanted to show you some water vapor imagery because it's kind of impressive to see a storm system like this in September. To be honest, it's kind of got me excited about what fall and winter and spring are going to be. This is a legit, kind of cold season looking storm system with a very well-defined dry slot on its backside and some deep convection ahead of it and a large, shield of cloud around the northern and western side of this. And it did produce some snow. We've seen snow reports from Utah through parts of the northern Rockies here out of this system. Now, one of the consequences of a dry slot like this is that we are going to have a difficult time filling in some of these regions with moisture until this whole system starts to move through. And that is what's made it a bit frustrating in terms of the forecast in parts of Montana, whereas some of the models showed a bit more widespread rainfall overall. But as we look back over the last 72 hours, here's our total accumulated precipitation through 6 a.m. this morning. Just looking here at the remnants of Francine. We had the tropical system that came in, and then we also have seen the first of a few deep lows that are going to come out of the Pacific Northwest and their influence here on the precipitation patterns across the plains and the parts of the Intermountain West and the Northwest. So we did get some of this rain last night into parts of Kansas, and in yesterday's video I was just kind of addressing some of the questions I had been reading about Kansas, and I think we should just do one more thing with it just to kind of finish that discussion real quick here. Now, there's a whole lot more that needs to be studied and done, and I'll work on that with time, but I just meant this kind of immediate discussion we had because you were asking questions about if there's any sort of kind of pattern to this that could be related to other variables like El Nino or La Nina. And then the question came up about sunspots and sunspot cycles and things like that. So I thought we'd just have a look at that data for a moment here and invite you to go to this website. Again, you can just go to Climate at a Glance. There it is. And you can pull up any state you want and choose the time period over which you want to do the analysis. You can also do this by region, by the nation, by the globe, division, kind of goes all the way down to city for some locations. And it's a great resource to play around with to kind of look at historical data. Now, as you noticed, let's just look at this. Back in 1990, 91, then we saw 2002 through 2004. We had 2012 through 2014. 2022 through 2024. And what it kind of looks like here is when you look at this 36-month kind of running total of precipitation, it's about every decade, right? And there was a question, is this lining up at all with sunspot cycles? That was the first question. So if you've never seen it before, this is the sunspot cycle record. The sunspots are due to these large convective plumes that make their way to the photosphere of the sun. They're cooler than the rest of the sun, but when the sun is producing a lot of sunspots, its activity tends to increase quite a bit. And just thinking this through again, so let's just pick off those years. Let's call it 1990, 2003, 2013, 2023. So that's about a decade time period. And if we notice, if we come back here, there was a minimum in the sunspots in 2023. That was one of our time periods. We then wanted to go look at 2014. Sorry, let's go back to that. So this would be 5, 10, 15. So that was kind of a maximum time period. Before that, it was around 2000, right? And that was near a maximum. It was a little bit before it. And before that, 1991, was it? So if we go back, this would be right here. That was just ahead of a maximum as well. So there seems to be, with the recent pattern, an alignment with this, the sunspot cycles. But I want to be just careful to understand that some of the other events in the past don't align with it, which means that, yes, our sunspot cycle seems to have some correlation with our precipitation and temperature patterns, but overall, it's not the dominant factor. And I think that's important to look at on the whole here. So I wanted to show you a tool that the National Weather Service and NOAA have, which allows us to look at relationships between precipitation and temperature with respect to any variable. So I picked the solar cycle, which is this 11-year cycle. You have all of these different things to look at, and we've used many of them. Okay, for example, there's the West Pacific Index, right? We've been talking a lot about that. That's the WPO. Later on this winter, I expect to look a lot at the NAO for the East Coast and watch the Arctic Oscillation for the East Coast as well. We'll pay close attention to the multivariate ENSO index. That will be one we look at when La Nina we think is influencing the Lato pattern, or we may just look at Nina region 3.4. All of these factors are the ones we stare at every day. So the map I made, I just decided to look at the whole year, January to December, and I made a correlation map with the solar index, which is just the number of sunspots. And I just want to make a point that for the majority of the country, these correlation coefficients going back to 1948, they're very weak. So you often don't hear me talking about the sunspot cycles as being a dominant driver of any given weather pattern, because I think it, while it may have an influence seasonally, subseasonally, and certainly week to week, it's a not a secondary factor, but maybe a tertiary or beyond. And so I don't often use it because the correlation coefficients are too weak. But if you wanted to make some very, very general comments, when we have a high sunspot cycle number, there tends to be a tendency toward drier conditions where you see blues. Drier, not dry, but drier. And there tends to be wetter conditions where you see the warmer colors here. But we've got to understand here, if you were to see a scatter plot of what the sunspot number looks like versus precipitation, I mean, it's like all over the place. This is not all correlated, one nice little tight thing like this. If it was like this, sorry, I'm trying to draw fast here. If the data looked like that, then you'd have a much tighter correlation, like 0.7, 0.8. But instead, it's way spread out. And that's what makes it difficult to use as a predictor. That's just me doing this quick analysis here. We can flip this over to temperature, and when I click create the plot, there we go. We tend to be, when their sunspot cycle is high, cooler across the south. I mean, I guess we could say a bit warmer, but these correlations are extremely weak. And understand, I'm doing this over an entire year, and that's because the sunspot cycle is, it builds up and then wanes. It's not something that comes on for just a month and then goes away. So I just thought we would look at that. I think it's an important thing to kind of analyze, and just so you understand why I don't talk a lot about sunspot cycles in my forecasting. I do think, though, that when you have things that constructively add, so let's say we get to a sunspot cycle peak and we also have a La Nina and we have the Bermuda high is split, the Pacific high is strong, we've lost momentum in the atmosphere. If all of those things were happening at the same time, then what you'd hear me say is, holy cow, look out for drought in this area. And that's what I would say. So just so we're aware, it can be a component to the forecast. And I think for today's video, I'm just going to leave it there. We've been also watching one other thing, and the National Hurricane Center has now started to issue kind of its alerts toward this. There's now a 20% chance of formation coming out of that Central American gyre, which we talked about yesterday, in the next 7 days. But it's really more about day 10 that we need to be watching this area very, very carefully. If you just watch the latest update from the European model on the probability of developing a tropical low pressure system, you start to see out there day 8, 9, and 10, the risk begins to increase in this area. And we're just going to watch it carefully because some of our models are very aggressive on the development of something here, especially the artificial intelligence, and you're going to see that one in a few minutes. So is the GFS, by the way. Both models are. This is left over from Gordon. There is a tropical wave leaving Africa we're going to keep a close eye on. But we're about to that time in the season where we tend to not be able to get tropical waves that leave Africa get to the United States. As you get toward the second half of the hurricane season, especially late September into October, we tend to have a lot of systems that are grown very close to home here rather than traversing the entirety of the Atlantic. So where are we this morning? We're dealing with some strong winds that are spinning up in Montana. We've seen that. We have the red flag warnings that extend out into South Dakota and Nebraska. Some areas of some fog early this morning, coastal flooding here. And as you can see on the backside of this winter weather advisory for the second low that's dipping down into California here in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And that low is right here. Okay, so here's the lead wave, really tight around this one today. Strong circulation here. That's where we have the wind issues in Wyoming, Montana, getting out into South Dakota, Nebraska. This is what's left of the circulation from potential tropical cyclone number 8. And if I step you up in the atmosphere, you'll continue to see the same narrative we've been carrying. So the wave on the backside is helping to eject the wave on the front side north. Here's just, again, part of the broader circulation around potential tropical cyclone number 8, which, it's now just decayed into a mid-latitude low. But what we're going to be paying attention to here is the interplay between troughs like these and the ones that are still stacked up. We are still very much in a pattern being dominated by the positive phase of the WPO, which means the source region is the Aleutian Islands, the Bering Sea, this particular region. So let's go have a look at it. This is the updated forecast from the artificial intelligence. And as we play this forward here, let's reset it. We see the lead wave going out, the deeper one going into California. We see a trough sink along the U.S.-Canada border here. We do see that once we get out toward, the early next week, a bit of a ridge builds into the west. Pattern tries to get a little bit blocky, but there's still more troughs in Alaska coming through. And what I'm paying attention to out here, this would be, we are all the way out to September 17th, is this. What we see here is while all this activity is happening in the Gulf of Alaska, the artificial intelligence is bringing something out here. Now, see, this is way out there like day 8 and day 9, and it's trying to bring this right into the Gulf and kind of team it up with a low that's going over, the Great Lakes states. And that's going to pull this circulation in to that area. So this is way out in the forecast, but we're watching the interaction between this extratropical low and the tropical low here. And the artificial intelligence has been most aggressive on getting these two things to team up. And since the AI hit Francine, it hit the active pattern from the WPO. It even grabbed potential tropical cyclone number 8 first. We're just going to have to give this a lot of our attention. So let's kind of see where this all pans out. Today, our convective outlook, we're going to watch Minnesota, parts of South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa for the risk of strong to severe storms. But there'll be an elongated front that goes all the way from the Red River of the north to the headwaters of the Red River of the south. You then see here over the southeast the chance for some storms as well. And tomorrow this opens up a bit more toward Minnesota and Wisconsin and Iowa for the risk of stronger storms. Just to see how this whole system kind of pans out. So let's get an update on this. There we go. Through the remainder of today, getting into tomorrow. This will be the end of the day on Thursday toward Friday morning. You can just see that system curling its way out. See it there? The one going up the East Coast as well. And here's the deeper low that's in California that's going to stir things up, maybe provide a little bit of rain in the Central Valley, but some snow in the Sierra Nevada, the Central Sierra Nevada. And we're going to watch those three systems kind of just move their way across the country. The newest update from the WPC over the next 7 days is shown here. And again, it's brought in better rains for Nebraska, parts of Kansas, Missouri, even over into Illinois, but definitely through Iowa, Wisconsin, southern Minnesota. This has been the tricky part of the forecast right here. All the heaviest rains have been on the backside, but seeing how much we can get in that dry slot into Montana or what comes out here into the Dakotas is going to be a challenge. A lot of our cotton belt is drier with this pattern, simply because the lows are too far to the north, west, or east, right? So there's just nothing going on here until that tropical system comes out later. That was the WPC. Here's the national blend of models, very similar. This is the AI. Take note of the difference in the AI's forecast here. We're going to look exactly as to why that is in a few moments. This would be the latest update from the high-res European model. And here is the latest from the GFS. Now, I want to show you actually 3 different models like this today, all right? So we have all of this on agweather.com, so you'll be able to come through here and look at the precipitation type and intensity over time. So we've already seen into this weekend. So let's pick this up Saturday. Let's refresh that. Let's pick this up Saturday into Sunday. There we go. There's the next low coming out of Colorado. Chances for snow early Sunday morning here. This is when the rain begins to spread. You saw that wave, right, earlier in the forecast? Okay, this is when the rain begins to spread across parts of Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri. We see that maybe getting into Iowa, Illinois by next Monday. And that's the second system that comes through and really brings up these precipitation totals here. System 1 leaves this way, 2 comes in through there. All right, following that one, we see, here we go, this is now next Thursday into Friday. Precip working its way into the southeast, and another system brewing in the plains. See that? But at this time, again, this is the 27th, we've got something down here to be talking about. Now, thinking that through, what are we going to get in terms of wind and snow before we see where it comes out of the tropics? As we mentioned, the system today coming out of Montana into the Dakotas is very windy. Wind gusts easily getting up 50 to 60 miles an hour in places here. We play this forward through the weekend into early next week. Let's just go out there 10 days. We start to again see some stronger winds building in this area. But offshore winds are very, very strong. This can produce some very choppy seas out here. The Cotton Belt, not a whole lot of wind to talk about. And we notice not a lot of precipitation. Strongest winds are going to be with the first system leaving, the second one coming in early next week here. And each of these has a chance of putting down some snow. So you notice right here in Colorado with that second system early next week, better chances of dropping some snow high in the elevation here in the Colorado Rockies. This is going on right now, today and tomorrow. We're just going to watch this part of the Rocky Mountains getting some early season snow. Now, before I show you some other models, I wanted to give you some probability maps like I normally do. So this is the probability of an inch over the next 10 days. And look at the extent of that dry slot in this area. Much heavier precip coming with the second system here. That's the one early next week. We're still quite wet in the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Now, on the drier side of this, should get a new model run in. There it is. Let's go back and revert. There we are. Again, like I mentioned, a lot of the Cotton Belt is drier. That dry slot area, drier. But you notice down here, best chance of staying under 1/10 of an inch. That's a lot of Texas over toward parts of the Mid-South and certainly along the lower Mississippi River Valley and then deep into the interior of the Northeast. It's also going to be drier as the ridge builds in here throughout much of the Northwest as well. So the precip that was with the current systems out, and we're going to start to see drier and warmer conditions return here. But I mentioned showing you some other models. So I'd like to actually show you have this on the website. This is the artificial intelligence forecast of precipitation type and intensity. Now you'll notice it looks a bit more, let's get a refresh here, there we go. Looks a bit more washed out, right? And that's because the resolution of this model is pretty coarse. But what I'm curious about with the AI model is this. Again, this is the 26th and 27th. The AI model is attempting to bring some sort of a tropical system into the Gulf of Mexico. That's why we're watching this so carefully. Now this current run, remember, is trying to time this low with this low. And this frontal boundary here that's sweeping all the way from the Great Lakes back to Texas could usher that thing straight through the southeast toward the mid-Atlantic and finish in the northeast. And it could be a big rainmaker. All the model runs yesterday from the AIFS did this as well. Now, we can't look out this far with the European. It only goes out 10 days, but we can look out this far with the GFS. And this is what it looks like. Let's refresh this. There we go. Just got the new 6C running. Must be loading here. Come on. There it goes. So let's just take it out. There's that system next week, early next week. Pretty consistent there. And here we go. This would be next Wednesday, the 25th. There's the 26th. It's also trying to take something through. The difference being, instead of having a low here, it's there in the GFS. And therefore, this is going to be a bit farther to the south and east. But that's two models that have something going right up the East Coast. And we just need to be aware that that is in the forecast. And it's not to say that the European model doesn't have it. If you notice, the day 8 through 14 forecast from the European is wetter in this area, meaning some of the ensemble members are picking up on this. But the AI is very aggressive on it, and the GFS has got it there as well. So I just want to make sure our attention stays on what could be coming out of the Caribbean. And I want to be very clear here. This is still 8 to 15 days away in total. It's way, way, way out there. But we just need to know that it is a factor and a feature to be watching. And if it dissolves in the models in the forecast, we will talk about that. And if it gets stronger, we'll have to have a conversation there too. But you saw my presentation yesterday. The environment is favorable this time of year for the development in that region. Okay? We do know that behind this, more ridging and drier. And the coldest air right now is in the west. This is our frost potential map over the next 7 days. And our high temperatures look something like this. Here's today's highs, getting into tomorrow on Thursday and Friday. The west is going to start to warm up soon, while the Midwest is quite hot. The central United States is quite hot. A little bit, one more cooler day for the west here on Saturday, but by Sunday into Monday, watch the temperatures begin to rebound here into California. Cooler air pulls into parts of the plains, and we've got a lot warmer air spreading its way up the west. Thinking through these temperatures here, this is the day 0 through 5, day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15. Can you see the buildup of the warmth back in the west? A little bit of a cool down for the plains as we just saw. But overall, because we're not building a ton of heat into Alaska, I don't have a really big reason just to call for a massive cool down that's going to be very problematic. What I will be watching is about the time, if we just go back here and show you this one more time, about the time that this low, the 27th and 28th, is down here, we just need to watch the depth of this one. We could get a shot of some colder air over the Great Lakes that could bring in a frost event at the end of September. But that is not, that wouldn't be considered an early frost in this area. Okay. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over today the short-term forecast. We've been talking about the WPO, been looking at the models. None of them have changed. I want to take you out there a bit farther. This website here, which you can see the URL at the very top, it's the CPC's website of their long-range forecast model. And what I want to show you here is we're going to go to North American precipitation for E3. This would be the last, the date at the end of the month. And what I'm going to look at is I want to look at the 3-month sliding window, October, November, December, November, December, January, all the way to March, April, May. And what you'll notice here is that this model is full on La Nina. Weak subtropical jet, drier here. Much more variable polar jet coming through like this, keeping much of the Midwest, even parts of the Mid-South, the Ohio Valley wet this winter. Big snows are forecast by the CFSV2 model in the north. So that mimics some of the other forecasts I've been sharing with you the last couple of weeks. We should get later on today an update from the Climate Prediction Center. We should get that update because we did get the brand new IRI seasonal forecast today as well. So I'll be watching for that tomorrow. This is the IRI. I'm going to show you a global picture. The October, November, December forecast for precipitation anomalies. And take a look at how wet we're expecting here, Indonesia and Australia. That's telltale sign of La Nina. The dryness across the southern tier of the United States, that is also a La Nina signal. The dryness that is here is a La Nina signal. This is the one that baffles me, right there in northern Brazil. Now, much of Brazil's main growing area, which is kind of between those two lines I drew, not forecast dry. This is pretty far to the north and east. There's not nearly the amount of production ag in this area as there is between these two lines. But we just need to keep an eye on what this might look like going forward. So let's now go out there to November, December, January. Let's go to December, January, February. And if you just look here across the United States, let's zoom in. Where's the U.S.? I'm going to just do North America. Yeah, we've got wetter look here and drier across the south. That's very much in line with several of the other models we've been running. And this will be the heart of the growing season for South America, so let's go have a look at it. And you'll notice that this is not a strong signal for any sort of drought risk here. I would just say if I'm worried about drought, it's going to be to the south, maybe along the Parana River, which runs right through here. Now, right now, we've got this. I'm going to play for you kind of a national animation here. Not national, international animation of precipitation over the last 7 days. And you'll notice some heavy rains along a stalled out boundary here, but there's a lot of smoke to the north. As we look at all of this, remember that over the next 10 days, we're still looking at potentially very heavy rain in southern Brazil all the way down into Argentina, but no early signs of the monsoon getting started here. But I'll finish with the latest update from the European. It continues to show that in the month of October, we're wetter here where a lot of the ag is. Drier to the north and drier to the south of it, but that's been a very consistent forecast for October by the ECMWF. And yes, it is the only model doing it, but we're just watching for consistency in it overall. So I'll leave you there. We'll talk again tomorrow morning. Have a good one. Thanks.